Hey guys, I'm back with an update on the Cobra. So when I last did an update, I think I was working on the brakes, and I'll just kind of show you where I am right now. So basically I've gotten all of the brake hard lines completed. I don't have all of them. This hard line here going from the front wheel up to the master cylinder, I need to do a little bit more tweaking on that, but I've gotten all of the rest of them done. This actually was kind of a pain. Bending up hard lines, and you can see back here where I've got the rear one. There's the right rear tire, makes some bends, comes across here, had to make a loop, and then it goes to a T that I put in there that goes to the left rear wheel and then along the frame rail up front. So like I was saying, this was really kind of a pain to do. Factory 5 sends you a bunch of different lengths worth of tubing, and none of them are really the exact length that you actually need. These are the generic brake lines that are sold in varying lengths, but they only sell them, I think, usually in like 10 inch increments. So you can buy 10, 20, well, I've bought 20 and 30, and then they also do 60 and various other lengths. So the thing is, whenever you get one of those, you're not going to have the exact length you need, so then you have some excess that you have to figure out what to do with. I've talked to some people that what they've done, and I think this is probably the right way to do it if you care about it looking really pretty, is they just buy a whole roll of brake line, and then they buy the double flaring tool and they just make their own lines from scratch. I think this is definitely the way to go if you care about a show car that you want to look really perfect, because then you can get the exact length you need and you don't need to worry about adding loops and things like that to make up for lost space. But this worked. I'll say I'm not really proud of the crossover line I did here in the front, so ignore that, but it is functional and safe. If you're going to, when you do this project, it is really useful to have a line bending tool. You can buy these at Harbor Freight or wherever, and they're really cheap. So there's no reason not to do it. It makes it a whole lot easier to bend the lines without kinking them. Let's see. I went with the Breeze Automotive flexible lines that go from the frame to the calipers. Breeze recommends that you install the lines with the fittings here vertically, which is the opposite of what Factory 5 recommends. And then what you do is at the caliper, you've got your little banjo bolt here, and so you need to play around a little bit to make sure that you get all of that in an orientation where it's not going to hit the wheel at full lock. So I played around with that a little bit. I think I'm not sure that I really agree with what Breeze says about installing it vertically is better. Their logic is that you don't want the hose. The logic they put in the documentation is that you don't want the hose pointing at the wheel, or at the wheel or tire. I guess I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that if the hose was horizontal, I think the angles with the natural bends would be a little bit better. But I'd say experiment with it different ways before you start drilling things, because I basically went with what they recommended. Other thing is, this would have been a whole lot easier to install if I had not put the F panels in first. So reality is, I shouldn't. Factory 5 tells you to rivet the F panels in first thing, and that's really terrible advice. I don't know why they put it in there, because the first thing you notice is you rivet the F panels in, and then you can't get at this bolt or the one on the other side with a socket to torque them down, which is a couple steps later. So, not really the best idea. The other thing is, I've been told that if you don't have the F panels on, when you complete the car, it makes, and do the body work, it makes it a whole lot easier to adjust the hood because you can just reach in and get the hood latches. So just a little tip, don't rivet the F panels in, just put some Clecos in. There's no reason to rivet them in anyway. Wait till later. Let's see. Another thing I've done, well, one last thing on the brakes, I guess. So I am using a 1995 Mustang Cobra master cylinder, and I'm using that because that's one of the recommended master cylinders if you're doing manual brakes. It's got a 15/16 diameter. It's a 15/16 diameter master cylinder, which is what folks say you want, plus readily available. If you're going to do that, then you do need to modify the brake pedal. It involves moving the pivot up 1.5 inches. Basically, you cut about 1.5 inches out of the pedal, and then you got to move the pivot point down. This is pretty easy. There's existing holes. I had to drill one hole. I guess there was one that was existing, but get it all in. One thing, if you're using this master cylinder, though, is that the lines that Factory 5 provides, which are 3/16 standard, which means that they're 3/8 by 24 thread, those will not thread into the master cylinder. The master cylinder is actually metric. So there's a company, Maximum Motorsports, that they sell the adapter fittings. I probably could have just messed around and figured out what I needed and saved a few bucks, but because they don't tell you what the size is, obviously, because they don't want you to go order something cheaper on Amazon. But it was still only 15 bucks for the fittings plus 4 bucks for shipping. So, I mean, it's kind of expensive for 2 fittings, but saves me enough time that I don't really care. So those are coming, and then once those come, I'm going to be able to bleed the brakes after I go through and make sure all the lines are tight, of course. One thing, I'll just come over here and show you. I've decided to go with DOT 5.1 brake fluid, so I got this nice modal brand, DOT 5.1. Reason for that is if you know the different kinds of brake fluid, 3 and 4 are the standards. 5 was a silicone based that works really well for racing and very durable, but it is not compatible with 3 and 4. It's also not compatible with ABS from what I've read. Now, I'm not using ABS in this car, but it's nice to have a brake fluid that's compatible with something you can buy in the store, just in case you're on the road and something goes wrong. That way, you know, you can buy a 3 or 4 to get you home, and then you can flush the brake system with 5.1 if you want. Boiling point's really high, so it's good for racing. So that's what I went with. So I'm looking forward to getting that system bled and being able to call the brakes completed. Another thing I did was I've riveted some panels on because I'm getting to the point where some of these I'm ready to put on. So my kids helped me rivet the side panels here on the trunk. You got the little triangle panels. You got to put those on first because there's some rivets that are on the inside. So once the big panels are on, you can't reach them. But put the little panels on, and then the big panels. Yes, I'm aware that there's some messy silicone on there. I'm going to clean that up eventually. And then the other thing I started doing is I've just about completed the passenger side pedal box. I riveted that up today because I wanted to get that done before putting the engine in. The only part of that pedal box I haven't done yet is the floor panel. Reason for that is that doesn't get in the way of the engine, and it'll be a whole lot easier to do once I get the car up in the air on the lift. Right now the frame's still on jack stands. I started doing the firewall panel. I didn't finish it, and the reason that I didn't finish it was because I realized I made a mistake. And well, let me back up. I have gotten the firewall panel installed. What I missed though was that I started riveting the bottom row of rivets below what's going to be the box for the heater and air conditioner. That's what that hole is in the firewall. And I had mistakenly remembered that the holes that uses are the top holes. Nope, it's the bottom. So I need to take a look at that. I'm either going to need to drill out those rivets and put new ones in, or just drill some new holes for the box. I'll figure that out later, but I didn't want to mess with it tonight. So once I do that, then I'm going to get started on some of the driver's foot box now that I've got all the pedal box stuff sorted out with that. And then the car itself will be ready for installing the engine and the transmission. Now, I'm a little bit of a ways away on being ready from the engine perspective. The transmission, I'm ready unless I find when I do the checks on the bell housing that it's off, but I'm told that those are usually pretty good. So the engine's getting really close. I had a couple of setbacks. So first one was when I went to go install the Speedmaster manifold, it would not actually seat on the head, and it was hitting here, just a little bit too wide. So I'll give Speedmaster the benefit of the doubt that they machined it correctly, dimensionally. These heads have been shaved a good bit, and it's possible that Edelbrock put the flange for the valve covers in a slightly different location than what a factory Ford head was. So I'm a little bit annoyed by that. I would have thought that Speedmaster could have just as easily, ended the casting here, because there's nothing that goes on in between, and what I'm having to do now is grind away the material to get it so that it fits. I'm about 75% of the way there, but then I'm going to be able to torque that on, and then the manifold's going to be ready. Other setback that I ran into, well, I guess a couple more. One setback I ran into was I went to go put the timing cover on, and because of my electric water pump that I'm using, I need to use the old style timing cover. Went to go put it on, and then I found this giant crack. Fortunately, these covers are only about $50 for a new one, and that's brand new, not used replacement, so that's not too bad. So I'll have to get one of those. And then I can't remember if I talked about this in the last video or not, but I had thought for some reason that the oil pickup for the 351 was the same as for the 302, and it's not. It makes sense that it's not. It was my own fault for not thinking about that. So I have to order a new pickup, and then I can put the oil pan on. I'm still debating what I want to do with the oil pan. I've got a couple of oil pans here. One's the stock one off of the 95 Mustang that I actually just got rid of yesterday, or Friday, I guess it was. Today's Sunday. And then I've got this nice Milladin oil pan. I'm still debating what I want to do. I kind of want to use the Milladin pan, but it will stick out below the frame rails. I'll just kind of show you here what I'm talking about. You got these big circular tubular frame rails, and for obvious reasons you don't want the oil pan sticking below that, because then that means you go over a speed bump or something like that too hard, and now you've dented your oil pan. So I'm thinking about just cutting the sump off and taking out the 5/8 or so of an inch. Another option would be I could just weld up I could weld up a panel, a protection panel, skid plate, whatever you want to call it. Not sure if I want to do that or not, but that's another option. So if you have ideas or thoughts, feel free to post in the comments. But that's kind of where things are. Like I said, the next big step is going to be bleeding the brakes. And then after that, I'm basically going to try to mechanically get the engine together. I want to get the intake worked out before I put the engine in, just because it's a whole lot easier to look all around and make sure that I'm getting it, that it's seating correctly with it out of the car. And plus, it's a lot easier to take the manifold off and on. But I need to get that done. And then once I do that, then I'm going to take the engine off of the stand. And I'm going to get the oil pan figured out as well, of course. And I'm going to take the engine off of the stand and start prepping it to hook up to the transmission and put them both in the car. You do need to put these in together. Big reason is, if you look, this cross member right here, the big 4-inch tube, goes underneath the tail housing of the transmission. And then that little flat plate in front with a couple of holes, that's where you bolt the transmission out to. So because of that, you can't move the transmission back and down. You do have to pull them out together. Some people have reported that they can do it individually, but once it's all together, I could see trying to do that if you had a reason why you had to pull it out. Me personally, I don't see the reason in trying to make it that difficult on myself putting it in. I might as well just put it all together outside and then use the engine hoist. So my thought is, once I get the brakes bled, I'm gonna torque down or I'm gonna put the wheels on properly. I've got the new lug nuts that I want to use. The ones I have on there are just some old ones that came off of my parts car. So I'll put those on properly. I'm going to take the car off of the jack stands at that point, put it on the ground for the first time as a roller, and then what I'm probably going to do after that is put it up on the lift, so that I can do some of the stuff underneath it, either before or after I put the engine and transmission in. So pretty exciting. In the next month or so, I think by the end of next month, or by the end of this month, it's August already, by the end of this month, I'm hoping that the engine and transmission will be in the car. So looks a little bit more like a car every day. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want some more, and we'll see you later.